Everyone, welcome to day 2. And Lucas, go ahead and take it away. And if you have slides to share, go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody to day 2 of our conference. Thank you for joining us. It's great to be with you guys, at least online. Hopefully we can do the next conference in person. I miss seeing you all in person and hanging out. So we have a great agenda for you guys today. So I'm just going to kick this off with a little bit of discussion on things to look out for the year, and sort of just things, what to expect coming from us at the Main Street, New Mexico Main Street from our program. So, okay, I think my computer's frozen. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, but we don't see your screen, so maybe stop sharing and then try again.
Okay.
Oh, we see it now.
Oh, you see it now? Okay. Hold on. 1 second. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about capital outlay. This year, of course, you heard Daniel talk about the legislative session. It was very successful for us. We got $10 million to work with. So this means for us that we get to clear out a lot of our backlog from our infrastructure pipeline. So we are always constantly working to get new projects in our pipeline for all our communities. And really after this year, we're going to be looking to start working on new projects. So that means for you guys, out there who haven't had a project yet, or you are starting to think about these things, now is the time to start preparing yourself to get into our pipeline and create some meaningful investments into your community and get some new infrastructure projects done. So this is just a quick overview. We'll do before we announce the application process for the 10 million that we're getting this year, we will do a presentation on capital outlay projects and our process and what we look for. So here is just a list of kinds of projects that we do. We do some smaller projects from wayfinding system to funding landscaping, benches, trash receptacles, to pedestrian safety kind of projects, to great blocks on Main Street kind of projects, which are projects like if you got to go to Farmington this year, you can see one of those kinds of, that's the kind of like bigger great blocks on Main Street projects that we will do. So I just want to give you guys a little example of those things that we do with our capital outlay projects. So really, for a lot of you who aren't going to be applying for this year for funding, if you don't have a project yet, this is a great time to start working on your concepts and ideas for projects coming up. So the way the process works for getting capital outlay funding is there's 3 phases. First phase is planning and development of construction ready documents. So it's important for you guys to work with us at New Mexico Main Street, myself, Daniel, Will, and Amy Bell, to start thinking about what kind of projects you want to do. And at that point, it's really important to talk to your local governments, your local partners, local economic development organizations to develop your projects, because those are what's going to be most likely to get funded from us and most likely to be successful and result in big differences in your community. So phase 2, after you would get a funding to do those kinds of designing of those projects, phase 2 would be the actual funding for the construction of those projects. And then in phase 3 is where we start to see the real benefit of those projects taking place in your community. And that's where private investment starts to happen. You get building rehabs, new businesses coming into your community and investing into your community. So to get that reinvestment to really happen, it really takes a lot of work with your local and regional economic development partners and organizations. Through this conference, you're going to be hearing about incubators, shared working spaces, things like that. Those are projects that typically take a lot of involvement, not just from a Main Street organization, but assistance from us, from Sean, who's been doing a lot of work in this area in terms of developing entrepreneurial supports in your communities. And so what you want to do is make sure you're working with us, you're working with your local organizations to find out what kinds of plans they have for these kinds of entrepreneurial supports that you're hearing about today and yesterday. And really, it's all about developing more resources and more supports in your community to attract new businesses into your community, entice more investment into your community. And really, at the end of the day, we're all held to a standard. So this is why I'm going to plug quarterly reports in here. So you guys have been doing actually really great. We've had last couple of years really great reinvestment statistics, and that's what enabled us to get this $10 million this year. It's one of the biggest investments that I've seen into our program since my time being a board member in Butler's to now at the state Main Street program. And that really is because of the reporting. So keeping track of what's going on in your community really helps us tell our story, show the benefits of Main Street community in different parts of the state. And so I just want to make sure that you guys all understand that work, though it seems tedious sometimes, is really important to making sure that we are telling our story and getting credit for the work that we're doing in your communities. So with that, I just want to give you a few things to look out for. Annual service delivery reports. That is where we go through and look at all the services that we have provided to you as a state Main Street program, from capital outlay investments to NMRA grants that we've given you to technical assistance that you've requested. So look out for those in your inbox. I'll be sending those out today. And if you see yourself not having a lot in there, try to really think about how you can take advantage of some of the services that we are able to provide. Feel free to give us a call about that. Annual accreditation reports have been going out. If you haven't gotten one yet, you should be getting one soon. So the combination of these two reports should really be used by you guys to get more grants, and also to make sure that your local communities, your local governments understand the benefits that are coming from being a Main Street program and getting funding as a Main Street program to do the work that you all do. So make sure you're taking advantage of these reports and understand how to use them when you're doing your reporting and your advocacy for your program. Capital outlay webinar, which I talked a little bit about earlier, is going to come in early summer 2022 this year. And it'll be much more in-depth of what I just kind of gave you guys as a little teaser of how we go through our capital outlay process, what the benefits are, give you examples of things that have been successful and been funded in the past. So even if you're not going to apply it this year, it might be good just to get on there and look and see, to make sure that you're getting yourself on the right track to position yourself in your community to get funding from us going forward. And again, quarterly report deadlines. If you have any issues, you should always feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help anybody who needs help getting their quarterly reports done. They're extremely important to us. And, you know, like I said, we had a major investment this year from the state capital outlay, and we want to keep that going. So then that really requires us to rely on you to get those quarterly reports in. So my contact information is right here on the slide. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I believe Sean will take it from here.
Great, thanks, Lucas. Appreciate that. A lot of cool stuff coming up for the State Main Street program. So it's my privilege to welcome three Main Street executive directors who are going to talk about the programs they have going on in their organizations to assist small businesses and entrepreneurs, inspiring business owners in their particular districts. We have Charles Whitson, who's the executive director of the Taos Main Street program. We have Lauren McDaniel, who's the executive director of the Los Alamos Main Street program. And then we have Lisa Pellegrino-Spear, who is the executive director of Clovis Main Street. And so each of them have really cool, different, exciting things happening in their organizations and for the businesses and entrepreneurs in their districts. And so we're going to give them an opportunity to highlight what's going on and maybe spark some interest for you to go back home and create some of these programs for yourself. A little housekeeping note. Please hold questions both verbally and in the chat, because each presenter is going to have their own breakout room after the panel is over with. So you'll have the opportunity to put your question in the chat there or ask it directly there. So the chat won't necessarily be monitored as strictly as it has been, as it was yesterday. But with that, I'd like to hand it over to Charles to speak a little bit about the programs that you have going on in Taos.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. As Sean said, my name is Charles Whitson, and I'm the director here at the Taos Main Street program. I'd like to start off by first giving a quick shout out to our panelists from yesterday. Connie, Kara, Mara, you guys were awesome. Hats off to you for the amazing work that you guys were doing. Inspiring, and I definitely will be looking to copy or steal some of those ideas for here in Taos. So today I wanted to really just talk about one program, and that was our Business Alive program. Business Alive was a direct response to COVID. It wasn't really something that was in our ETS at the time, but as we all know, when COVID hit the world, everything changed quite drastically, quite quickly. So we followed the basic formula and started by trying to identify a need. So during the time, there were widespread shutdowns. Most of the businesses in our community were shut down. And many of the businesses in our district that traditionally relied on solely relied on foot traffic were sort of left without the ability to do any business with their customers. I imagine that that's the case for some of you in your district as well. And I also imagine that everybody has some businesses in their district who have almost completely ignored the technological advances of the past few decades. So we sent out some surveys and had some conversations with businesses in our district and did an online search for them. And it became really apparent to us really quickly that a lot of our businesses had little to no online presence, and a lot of them just had static websites. So that was sort of the idea of how Business Alive was hatched. We thought, well, since everything is shut down, let's try and give them the ability to do business with their customers online. So the original idea behind Business Alive was really empowering district businesses with e-commerce capabilities, specifically with websites that had online stores like Shopify enabled on them. As some of the presenters yesterday mentioned, partnerships were definitely key to all of this. We started having conversations with some of the other business support type of organizations in our community, like our Chamber of Commerce, UNM Taos, our SBDC, our Taos Entrepreneurial Network, for one, to make sure that we weren't duplicating any of their efforts, and for two, to gauge their interest and see if they might be willing to partner with us on something like this. I shopped the idea to some local web developers. Most of those conversations were not productive at first. Most of them were concerned about bottom line, and I knew that we simply weren't going to be able to pay market value for these services. But after a conversation with our local SBDC, he turned me on to a new tech startup called Taos High Tech. And I had one conversation with them and they were immediately on board. I mean, this fit right into their vision of empowering Taos businesses through technology. And again, without them being able to provide some of these services at a drastically reduced rate, this program wouldn't have been possible, plain and simple. UNM Taos also partnered up with us and helped us with program development, and their digital media arts department provided some short recorded webinars and actually provided a student intern to Taos High Tech to work to help them work with businesses on the project. So just a little bit of program development here. We started by developing an application and a matrix to score applicants. We asked a variety of questions on the application to gauge each applicant's technical skills, marketing abilities, and most importantly, the time they were willing to commit to the program. The most illuminating question by far was, how much time do you have to spend working with a development team? We learned that applicants who only had 1 or 2 hours a week had their projects really drag on for a long time, as opposed to those who had 6 or 8 hours or more a week to spend. They were able to work with the development team, get them what they needed on a regular basis, and complete their work through the program in a timely manner. We finalized the decisions on the type of technical assistance we were going to provide. And we came up with providing website development or website enhancement to selected applicants with a fully functioning online store, which we use Shopify for. UNM Taos also created some short webinars, as I said before, and offered some continuing education programs to those who were interested in continuing to learn more about online marketing, website development, things of that nature. So how the program was funded. Well, while most of this program development work was taking place, I started having conversations with some of our local foundations and other potential funders. After all, you want to make sure you're not wasting everybody's time going through all this program development work if there's not going to be any funding for the project. So we had done a sufficient amount of program development work and had some partnerships in place. And I started pitching this idea to some potential funders. So we were able to secure $20,000 from the Taos Community Foundation, $10,000 from the Lore Foundation, and $4,000 from Los Alamos National Labs to support two cohorts in this program. We certainly had some challenges, and I think it's always important to touch on the challenges because none of these projects or programs are without hiccups or challenges, and it's important to kind of talk about those a little. So one of the initial challenges we faced was project sprawl. Certainly during the program development stage, I think everybody was really eager to provide a lot of things that I think we ultimately had to rein in and say, I think we need to focus a little more on a very specific area and not be overly broad. Like we are not going to fix all of these businesses' marketing issues or teach them how to market their business successfully in this program. Really, our focus is just enabling them with e-commerce capabilities. So kind of like Mara said yesterday, you've got to be flexible. Don't get married to a vision or an idea that isn't working. If something's not working, just stop doing it, maybe. So another challenge we faced was our first cohort was definitely too big. We accepted 10 businesses into our first cohort. We really should have only accepted 5. So we could have given Taos High Tech more of an opportunity to give them more individualized support and attention. Time constraints was obviously another challenge. There was some business owners that, although extremely enthusiastic about the program and really chomping at the bit to get started, at the end of the day, they really didn't have the time they needed to dedicate to getting this all going. So that's definitely one to kind of be aware of. And then the technological gap, divide, technological literacy, however you want to say it. There were some business owners that learned that they simply just can't manage a website with an online store, and some of them had to go all the way through the program to learn that, but they also learned that they'd need to pay someone else to do it. And some of them were actually able to contract with Taos High Tech for additional services after the program. So it worked out for some of them. They hired another local business to help support their business. But some of them at the end of the day just didn't have the time or the energy or the knowledge to actually be able to manage an online store. And finally, the results. So the results were mixed. And I think it's really important to understand that that's okay for the results to be mixed. I think we all understand that like one new business startup, expansion, or just ensuring that an existing business remains economically vital can really have a significant impact in our districts. So, it's really hard to bat 100% like Connie has batted with her program, but it's okay to have businesses that go through these programs that ultimately aren't successful. So far, we've worked with 13 businesses and have successfully launched 7 fully enabled e-commerce websites. Two of the more successful stories I want to share real quick. One is a business called Twirl in our district. They're an interactive toy store and play space. My kids absolutely love that place. I can't even drive by it without them being like, let's go to Twirl. We were able to get their online store up and running before the holiday season, which was huge. So obviously they generate the majority of their revenue during that season. And they reported back to us that their online store accounted for 5% of their total sales for their holiday season. So it made a huge difference for them, and they were extremely thankful for the work. And it really, that alone justified all the time and energy they spent, to get this online store up and running. Another success story is a business called Lanadura. Their tagline is "Giving sheep a job." She's an amazingly talented local maker who didn't actually have a storefront in our district, but sells her products in multiple stores in our district. So we created a new website from scratch for her. And it really created an entirely new facet for her business. Previously, she was going door to door, selling her products at festivals, just trying to get other local businesses to carry her products. Now she's able to have direct contact with her customers. They can shop online directly from her, and it expanded her business in a way that she's just never experienced before. So those were 2 amazing success stories. And I would say, in conclusion, it really only takes 1 or 2 of those type of success stories to make a business development program viable and worth your time. So I'm going to drop a link for Lanadura's website in the chat after I finish, so anybody who's interested can look at that and see kind of the quality of work that was done and the impact that it had on this person's business. And I'm happy to answer any more questions or go into more detail in the breakout rooms after the panel. So come hang out if you want to learn more. And that's it for my presentation for today. And I will turn it over to the amazing Lauren McCann.
Thanks, Charles. That was a very interesting program that you have going on there, and some great successes. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lauren McDaniel, the director of Los Alamos Main Street. What I wanted to talk about today is our Los Alamos Retail Accelerator program. This program was really founded with the basis of 3 goals in mind. We first of all wanted to help diversify the retail offerings in Los Alamos. Number 2, we wanted to educate aspiring entrepreneurs on resources and connections, and thus help de-risk their entry into starting a retail storefront in Los Alamos. And then 3rd, we wanted to help address our current vacancies. So these were all issues that we've had challenge with over the past several years, but were made more apparent with the pandemic. So we had this concept in mind, what we wanted to do. It would involve 2 phases, training phase, and then also a pop-up phase, so retailers could test their concept. So we sought funding. We received a New Mexico LEADS grant from the New Mexico Economic Development Department, a $15,000 grant. We also received a $5,000 grant from the Lannel Community Partnerships Office. And then we also received technical assistance through New Mexico Main Street. Sean was critical in helping us start this program. We engaged with Melanie from Kick-Ass Entrepreneurs as well, and Hatchform. And then Leighton Moon, Cam and Julia were also very instrumental in helping us. Of course, LACDC, Los Alamos Commerce and Development Corporation, also contributed with staff and overhead in-kind contributions. For those of you who don't know our structure, we're a little bit differently structured than other Main Street organizations, and our Main Street program actually falls under our nonprofit 501c6 LACDC. So the Los Alamos Chamber is also part of that organization. So the Chamber of Commerce was very critical and instrumental in this program, as was our creative district. So overall, I would say our budget on the low end was about $35,000 for this program. So we opened up, just to talk a little bit about the time frame, we opened up applications in August. We assessed candidates at the end of August. We notified them of their participation in September. And then we actually got our first cohort in the training in September as well, for a 7-week program. So we had 14 applicants overall. It was a variety of industries, from bakers, home goods store, an outdoor recreation company. We had a candy and ice cream store concept, several artists, a bookstore, bed and breakfast concept. So you can see it really spanned different industries. 11 ended up completing the program. Again, it was a 7-week program. They met once a week for a few hours on learning various elements of running a retail storefront. So we worked closely with Sean on that schedule. It included topics like store layout and design, ordering and inventory, branding and marketing, licenses and regulations, cash handling, you name it. We covered a lot in those 7 weeks. So after the 7 weeks concluded, we chose our top 4 candidates who were interested in moving on to our pop-up phase, and they had to apply. They had to show their demonstrated commitment to the program. All of them were regular attendees of our workshops. So we selected 4, Little Studio on the Mesa, Sami's Dot Bookstore and Tea House, Inspired Jewelers, and our first retail cannabis company in Los Alamos called Weed. So those 4 retailers, we identified 2 separate locations for them in our downtown area, and we covered with the grant funds their rent for 8 weeks. We covered their utilities, we covered their display costs, we covered their marketing and advertising, insurance, janitorial. So they really had a chance to test out their concept in a retail storefront risk-free after their training. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the results. We did get a lot of positive feedback from the community that instead of just complaining about some of our challenges in Los Alamos, we actually tried to implement something that could help solve some of them. So people were very thrilled by this pop-up concept. I think we timed it so that we capitalized on Black Friday, post-Thanksgiving shopping and Christmas shopping. So they actually, the 4 went into retail spaces in mid-November. They operated for 6 weeks, 1 week on either end for setup and takedown. We did get a lot of publicity locally and regionally. We had the governor visit our pop-up space, and we got to tell her about the program and that we were very thankful for the New Mexico Economic Development Department's grant support as well. So that was very cool for the retailers. In terms of some of the numbers, we did conduct a post program survey, and those 4 who were in the pop-up said that in those 6 weeks of operating their storefront, they made $60,000 in gross revenue, $31,000 in net revenue approximately. Since we concluded that pop-up, 3 out of the 4 have purchased permanent spaces in Los Alamos County, 2 in Los Alamos town site and one in White Rock, which is about 15 minutes from Los Alamos. And the fourth is our retail cannabis business owner, and he is still looking for space, and obviously he can't sell cannabis until April, but he does want to have a permanent location here as well. We also gathered some other stats about their future hiring in Los Alamos. Over the next 12 months, they anticipate adding 6 additional full-time employees, as well as 9 part-time employees among their 4 businesses, which is great to hear about workforce development and job growth as a result of these new businesses. General feedback from these entrepreneurs is, again, they really appreciated us doing this program. They enjoyed and appreciated the training up front, us connecting them with other mentors, current business owners that are in our community. It reinforced some of their beliefs that consumer interest in retail offerings in Los Alamos is strong. It's not for a lack of customers that's preventing businesses from starting. They'd love to see this offered again, and all of them would recommend the program to others who are looking at possibly starting a business here. In terms of recommendations and kind of advice after we conducted this program, I would definitely build in more time for planning and implementation. After we applied and secured some funding, as Sean will testify to, it was a very, very tight time frame for us to get everything in order, both for planning the workshops and for securing space for the pop-ups after the workshops concluded. Yeah, not only more time frame built in, but some of the other feedback we received is that they'd want more one-on-one coaching, and we didn't really have time for that. So that's something that I would want to build into the second phase, especially for those who are going through the pop-up phase. Coordinating insurance, having 3 businesses in one pop-up location was a bit challenging. So there was some lessons learned with that as well. I guess I didn't cover this, but we actually had to put the retail cannabis business in a separate locations for various reasons. But there were 2 spaces that we basically leased out, our organization leased out, and 3 of the businesses went in one, and then the retail cannabis was in the other. There were also inventory issues that we hadn't really considered in a short time frame for when we selected these entrepreneurs after the training. They had to quickly get their inventory in order for the pop-up to be open. And with the pandemic, inventory is across the board pretty challenging right now. So we'd probably want to build in more time for that as well in the future. Communication, advertising was extremely important as well during this process. And then the final thing that I would recommend that we change in the future is maybe have more specific industry focused trainings, because restaurant and cannabis are very different from traditional retail. So that's our program in a 10-minute nutshell. I'm happy to chat with those who are interested in learning more in the breakout rooms. I will now turn it over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren and Charles. I appreciate you guys. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lisa Pellegrino-Spear. I'm the Executive Director for Clovis Main Street. And I'm going to forewarn all of you that unlike everybody else's presentation, mine will have profanity in it. So I apologize in advance. Something I should have warned my commission about when I did my presentation for them. So ours is Kick-Ass Entrepreneurs of Clovis, and we are the very first pilot project off of Kick-Ass Entrepreneurs of Santa Fe, which is created by the amazing Melanie Lindsay, who's with us today on here, and you guys will get to hear more from her about the program as well. So this all started because we were awarded with New Mexico Resiliency Alliance an intensive study, so an economic intensive study that we did with Sean, Rhea, and Michelle. And in that finding, we really identified that we had some missing links for having entrepreneur support. So we have all these small businesses, and like most of your communities in rural New Mexico, there's majority of your businesses are entrepreneurs, and they're the ones who are investing in your communities, whether it's district wide or throughout the state. That's really what the primary business is in New Mexico. So we realized that we needed to have, some type of entrepreneur support, and Melanie had this awesome program that Sean was familiar with, and she created this, the Guide to Making Kick-Ass Entrepreneur Magic. And she provided us with this booklet of how to do everything from start to finish on how to create this program. And let me tell you, out of everybody's program, we are definitely the cheapest out of everybody. So this is affordable in everybody's community. We only spent Melanie super cheap. So it was a very inexpensive piece to be able to get her to bring us on board. And it was really just a time commitment. And, that was one of the things I think that we did struggle with, was that it was me and one other, Scott, who was our IT and local creative person on our board, who really spearheaded it for us. And the two of us just had so much on our plate that it ended up being a little bit challenging to keep up with. However, we were so super excited about it because it really was this fluid project. Even though she had this guidebook for us, there is so much of it that we could do and create on our own and really adapt to our community. So what it was it's this, it's still using that asset-based formula that New Mexico Main Street likes to use, and National Main Street. You're taking entrepreneurs who are already in your community, who have already started businesses and have already invested in the community, which they love, and trying to connect them with each other to grow the support for them, and then also to connect them to maybe people who want to start businesses in your community and share the stories of how they were doing it. So in doing that, it's Melanie always reminds me, it's storytellers and not presenters, because it's about them telling their stories. And that was one of the key things that I had to keep getting into my head, was that it's not about, you didn't want to ask people to present, you wanted to ask people to come and share their story. So we really started it with having everybody do their own bios. And so to be able to do the marketing and kick it off, we asked everybody to create a fun bio. And so it started with me and Scott, and we put in nicknames. We wanted it to be just something that was catchy and fun for people. So superpower, what are their superpowers, their nicknames, what their life mottos were, and kind of had that as their introduction into what we would then use as marketing. And we did create our own marketing platform for it. So we have our own Kick-Ass Entrepreneurs social media pages, Instagram and Facebook. And then we also have the MailChimp and so forth that goes through that social media marketing platforms. And then we would create all of the ads and so forth that would then feature those speakers and storytellers. And then Melanie already had all of the graphics, and we just created our own logo based off of her logo. So here's some of our swag. These are our decals that we've got. And I saw Melanie sipping out of her her Kick-Ass Entrepreneur mug as well. So it was really just creating this time to then have these events where people could come together and support each other and tell their stories of how they became an entrepreneur and why they chose Clovis. And the hardest part was we kicked it off during COVID, and we were like, how are we going to do this? It's all about happy hour, right? And getting everybody together and just having this casual event. And so we decided, well, let's try it virtually and see what happens. And we had probably our best turnout at the first one. I think we had about 17 or 18 people. And each one we did the first three, 1, 2, 3. So we did our first 3 completely or 4 virtually. And then our last 2, we've done virtual and in person. And we've had speakers from our downtown district, but we didn't limit it to that. We did it with also anybody in our community. So anyone could be a speaker at the events. And we've had them from our co-working space. We've had one of our gym owners, our taco fast food restaurant. We had our bowling alley, a photographer. So you could see that there's this wide range of people that we were hitting, you know, and anybody who wanted to talk about their businesses and tell us their stories was really awesome. You know, that's what we really wanted. I mean, we learned stuff that you wouldn't expect to learn from people and entrepreneurs. I mean, one of them, you know, talked about how he literally had $600 left in his bank account and didn't know how he was going to meet mortgage and didn't know how he was going to meet, let alone his personal expenses, but also those business expenses. But he didn't want to give up. And that was so inspirational, I think, to everybody else too. That one had like over 600 video watches afterwards on Facebook. So he really got a lot of publicity, but and it's about picking entertaining speakers too, at least to kick it off and get it started and going. But we had some great ones. Some of our things that we learned and what worked was that having at least 2 people, I think, for your co-host, because Scott and I had this great witty banter together, and it kept the momentum and the questions going. And especially when we were virtual, you know, nobody likes to speak up on these Zooms and stuff unless you really have to. And it was a great way for us to keep that conversation going and to make sure people felt comfortable with it and that it was very casual. We also, one important ingredient is alcohol. So always make sure that it is hosted during happy hour. You want to make sure that people are comfortable enough that they're drinking. They're not afraid to ask those questions that they wouldn't normally ask. And you just want them to feel engaged and in a comfortable environment. So humor, alcohol, casual, no presentations at all whatsoever, no PowerPoints. And then random questions. So Melanie had created this whole thing for us on how to kick this off, but Scott and I were both still like, okay, what are we supposed to tell people? Like, what are we supposed to be asking them? And we kind of we put it together at like the last minute before our very first storyteller, because we're like, Melanie knows all these questions in her head, but we didn't really know what are we going to ask them when time stalls out and it gets quiet. So we put together these questions, you know, why Clovis, why this business, you know, how do they see themselves in the next 5 years, or what successes they had, and most importantly, what challenges they had. And then of course, what local resources helped them through their project? What were some of the best, you know, pieces that they could share with someone else that was wanting to do startup on how to make their project work? And then again, we had the fun questions in there, like, what is your superpower? And what animal do you hate the most? What and why? And like, what do you make the best? What's your favorite, you know, like, what can you make that's amazing? Just some random questions to just kind of throw the, you know, conversation in a really casual format. But I think it was, number one, we did a lot of like finding the right people, like that was, and finding their people. So entrepreneurs like may not necessarily know how to find other entrepreneurs. And so that was really the whole purpose of this, is putting those same people, same like-minded people that are willing to invest in their community and that love their community and want to develop on it, the same projects that we're doing and the same work that we do as Main Street, into finding those people in our community that are doing the same thing out of their own pockets. And I think my favorite thing that I've really learned from this is just how brave those people are. Like, they are bold and they are risk takers, and entrepreneurs are amazing because they are willing to put everything on the line. They're willing to, you know, quit their jobs that they have, those 9-to-5 jobs, and try something new because they're passionate about it. And I think a lot of us do what we do as Main Street because we're passionate about it too. So, and remembering this is a schmooze event. So that's what Melanie's key word is schmoozing. So we always have to have it as making sure people know it's schmoozing. Let's see. But really it was just navigating that entrepreneur path in Clovis. So we wanted to pave the way for new entrepreneurs, and then hoping that they would want to see downtown as a place where they could invest in as well too. So it was really a full circle piece for our downtown district, what our community was missing, and what we could host realistically and affordably. So it was definitely something that was really fun. And I think one of the key things that we realized too was that the people who are supporting those local entrepreneurs then, and once they heard those stories, they felt invested in helping those entrepreneurs be successful. So other entrepreneurs were all of a sudden excited to help and support another entrepreneur, and realize that, oh my gosh, there was this business in town I never knew of. And then they were their biggest fans. So it was really creating like this fan club for small business development. And we just really had a great time with it. And Melanie she's awesome, and it was really fun, and like I said, cheap and easy. So it was a really fun project, and Sean just kind of knocked it out of the park with knowing exactly what would fit. And now I just have to kick my butt into gear and really get active with it this upcoming year. And we have a couple of speakers already lined up, but we realized one of our failures was that we couldn't do this necessarily for us. Melanie does it monthly, and I couldn't fit it into my timeline as the Main Street director to do it every month without a spearheaded, a board member that could help spearhead it. And Scott ended up having to get off our board because he got a new job that just didn't allow him time for helping us with it. So I think that's one of the big things, is having yourself a major supporter with you to make sure you can do that.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
Lisa, but I think we have to cut it a little short,
Sure.
because we only have 2 minutes left. So we're probably not going to have time for breakout session. So if anybody just has a question for Charles, Lauren, or Lisa, you can put it into the chat. And then I know, would you guys be willing to put your contact information in the chat box, just in case somebody has a question, they could get in touch with you directly? So does anybody in the last couple minutes, does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask either any of the panelists?
Couldn't we go into the break if we want and ask them questions? I mean, I don't do anything in my break. I mean, we've only been going for 40 minutes. I'm not, anyway, I just a thought. I thought maybe we could chat and the break.
Stay on.
We can do that if you guys want to, and those who want to stay on, we could leave the chat rooms open for like 10 minutes.
Can I say one more thing real quick to close mine? So I just wanted to let you guys know, thank you, Sean. One of our speakers, he made the most brilliant point that Melanie and I love to go off of now, that the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is spelling entrepreneurs. So that's our key motto now.
Or saying it.
Right.
Okay, we'll go ahead then and open the rooms for a while, and you'll be able to select the room you would like to visit.